Someone breaks into your home in the night.
Right. Right. Well, if it's a bunch of teenagers who break into your home, they don't have any weapons, and you go after them with a golf club, that's no longer reasonable. You're now using excessive force against those teenagers.
This is part of the problem of what's happening here in Canada. Now, this is an older clip, but it is very relevant to what's happening today. This is a clip of Justin Trudeau talking about what our rights are when it comes to firearms in Canada.
A culture where the difference is guns can be used for hunting or for sport shooting in Canada, and there's lots of gun owners, and they're mostly law-respecting and law-abiding. But you can't use a gun for self-protection in Canada. That's not a right that you have in the Constitution or anywhere else. If you try and buy a gun and say it's for self-protection, no, you don't get that. You get it for hunting. You can get it for sport shooting. You can take it to the range, no problem, as long as you go through our rigorous background checks. But there's a difference around the culture.
And that's even become very limiting these days. Now, this clip from this show Zoomer, which I'll make the entire show available. Link will be in the description down below. You can watch it in its entirety. But this was shared out by the CCFR recently. Watch highlights from Canadian TV show discussing self-defense laws in Canada, including what is reasonable versus what is permissible to defend oneself. Pay close attention to the words of advocate Hanya. I won't be able to pronounce that, and audience member Michael. This is really interesting. Let's go over some of this.
What does the law say about self-defense in Canada? When are Canadians permitted to use force to defend themselves?
Right. Well, in Canada, we have the right to defend ourselves, our loved ones. We have the right to defend our property, but it's solely for the purpose of defense, defending yourself. You have to be reasonable. So a judge...
Wait a minute, what's reasonable?
What's reasonable is...
Someone breaks into your home in the night.
Right. Right. Well, if it's a bunch of teenagers who break into your home, they don't have any weapons, and you go after them with a golf club, that's no longer reasonable. You're now using excessive force against those teenagers.
But how are you supposed to know that they don't have any weapons?
You don't. Oftentimes, you don't. And you're right, it's a very difficult situation. But you have to remember, at some point, a judge is going to scrutinize your behavior and what you did. And, you know, some of the questions a judge is going to ask, for example, what was the nature of the threat or force? How imminent was the threat? Did you have other options? Did you have to go at the person with a baseball bat or a golf club in that scenario? They will look at what other options were open to you.
So this is this is really what's wrong here. In Canada, this is literally how they look at it. You need to be thinking about what a judge is going to think when you're reacting to a situation within your own home. Within your own home, someone's broken into your home. You got to worry about, well, are they armed? I don't know. I don't have time to check. Hey, Mr. Robber. Hey, what kind of weapons did you bring in with you? Because a judge may ask later. Now, of course, famously, we've seen some sheriffs in the United States. Here's one sheriff basically laying it out. Well, this is his recommendation if somebody tries to break into your home.
But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight.
Yeah.
With their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
And that's the way it is in other parts of the world, i.e. the United States of America. But we're going to continue with this clip because it just gets so absurd. This is the way, this is the actual mentality in Canada about self-defense. And whether or not you actually even have a right to self-defense. By the spoilers, by the time you get to the end of it, the end of like the conversation, you feel just questioning, where do I even stand? Can I even defend myself? Or should I, famously, as the sheriff in Toronto suggested, just leave your keys at the front door. That's all they're going for, is your car. Just leave the keys at the front door. Avoid another conflict.
right? So it's very important to keep that in mind.
Tanya, I just want to give the final word to you on this because you're an advocate for abused women and children. What are your thoughts about this?
I think that it's very difficult to understand how you're actually going to react when you are being compromised or threatened. Our government and our laws should be there to protect us.
And it can feel like the law's not on your side.
100%.
Yeah.
And if somebody is breaking into your house, do you actually think that you're going to stand there and think about, oh, I better not do this, I better do that, or not?
Or ask them, excuse me, why are you here?
And by the way, are you carrying a gun? Or in my case, many, many years ago, I did have somebody break into my house, and I immediately ran to the kitchen for a knife. And by the time I reached that knife, he hightailed out of there. So for me, as a civilian, I would say to you that acting quickly, defending yourself quickly is everything. And having our politicians and our police defending that is paramount, and we are missing that today.
I would like to add to that. If the government's main focus is to crack down on law-abiding citizens protecting themselves, all it does is it creates an incentive for more criminals to have more criminal behavior and be even more emboldened in their violent behavior, i.e. breaking right into your home while you're in the home, because why not? They would assume, the criminals would assume, you're a law-abiding citizen, you will be unarmed. You're going to be helpless in this endeavor.
I know more people than not who not necessarily carry a baton, but use something for self-defense, whether it's a spray or a taser. Oh, there you go. I don't think this is legal.
No.
No, okay. Is there anything in front of me? Like, how about a taser?
No.
Not legal?
Keep
Look,
going.
Scary sounding, though. I mean,
Does make a scary sound, yeah, but
alarm?
legal.
How about spray?
Totally illegal.
Totally illegal?
Totally.
This is bear spray. Or
Careful about that alarm. There's a recent case where those alarms were known to create hearing damage. So you could actually probably be sued by the culprit by using one of those alarms too close to their ears in Canada. You wouldn't see this kind of thing if somebody broke into your house, perhaps in Texas. But here in Canada, you might get sued. So be very careful about that.
Actually, this is coyote spray. Dog spray,
Nope.
None of that's legal?
Doesn't matter what label they put on it. It's pepper spray. It's a prohibited weapon.
Not only that, aren't you more likely to get yourself into an altercation when you're carrying a weapon?
I don't know.
I believe that was something I read once upon a time. And so
from some liberal professor, I'm sure. You're more likely to get into a confrontation, this woman is suggesting, based on the fact if you have a weapon or not. Let's see how that one plays out.
when you're showing up carrying these weapons,
Right.
you're already sort of
Arming
you've got
yourself,
yes,
yeah.
you're
feel like
showing
you're
up armed,
anticipating
you're
it
almost?
anticipating
Right.
attack, and
So
you're
if I could just interject your statement, Texas is one of the safest states in the U.S. And the reason for that is you have the right to carry.
pretty sure in the States they have a little bit more relaxed gun laws than they do in Canada. And our gun violence in Canada is much lower than it is in the United States. Isn't that true?
I understand that, but my point is simply that when we're talking about the right to survival, which is your only instinct as your human instinct is to survive, if you're out in the streets and you are carrying, I'm not saying that we should be doing that, but I'm just saying it's fascinating that in that state it is working, and it is working for that reason that everybody understands what their rights are and not to cross the line.
But can I interject and just
It's interesting that there's an old statement. It says an armed society is a polite society. People are less likely actually to face confrontation when they know that there's a higher risk of more bodily harm, I think. And this is, again, getting back to the argumentation that if the criminals knew that the average citizen could defend against a criminal, they'd probably be less likely to commit the crime in the first place.
as well, everyone who, well, you hope, and probably in Texas we're dealing with a lot of legal firearm owners.
Yes.
People who have training to use those firearms, and
Correct.
they have training to understand the law of what happens if they use them.
Right.
But the point that you're making, which is when everybody knows that everyone can fight, there's less likely to be a fight. I don't think we necessarily need weapons for that. If, as a society, we knew that we were, just like we understand most people have a driver's license, if we knew everyone in this room knows
be to that?
You got to learn true self-defense, in my opinion, and Michelle can speak to this, but who has the training?
I see the value of...
Well, apparently training, I mean, training's not going to do you much good against a criminal with a firearm if you're not allowed to protect yourself. If you're not given, or if your rights to protect yourself are not preserved in the country. And that you really got to worry about how these things are worded, because it is your right to defend yourself. What's not being upheld is your rights within the country to defend yourself. They're often seen by Canadians as some sort of privilege. All of our rights, people will often say things like, we should be allowed to do these things. No, it's our right, and our rights are being infringed on by our government, allowing criminals to take advantage of us while the government comes after us for actually just preserving our rights.
Self-defense courses, but I think they are inadequate in a lot of situations, and I think it could put people in danger. Knife attacks are really up in this city, and most self-defense experts will tell you that it doesn't matter how strong you are, how skilled you are against a person with a knife. If you're up against a person with a knife, the best thing you can do is run, but if you can't run, you're in trouble. With regard to hunters and prey that was raised earlier, I think the hunters would be a little more reluctant to take on the prey if they thought the prey had a weapon of some sort. And it seems to me that the laws that we currently have are antediluvian. They're based on the life that was here maybe in the 60s in Canada. In the United States, they have stand your ground laws. They have more liberal laws in terms of defending yourself. I'd like to know whether any of the panelists are aware of an attempt, a serious attempt to improve the laws so that ordinary citizens, regardless of their abilities, can defend themselves.
Well, we're not in Kansas anymore, that's for sure.
That's right.
Well, that is true. We're not in Kansas. We're in Canada. We're in a place where the government has been pushing very hard to remove the right to defend yourself. Not only that, handguns in Canada, there's a bit of a cultural thing. It's really crazy. Handguns are seen as this thing that criminals use. In the United States, that is, when people try to go out, when the liberals try to go after guns in the United States, they're trying to go after scary looking guns like AR-15s and things like that. They will never, ever attempt to try to go after handguns. Handguns are the big bad guys in Canada. I don't know how this culturally became a thing. If you think you know the answer to that, leave a comment in the comment section down below. But handguns in the United States are seen as the last bastion, the last thing that you can touch. They'll go after rifles, they'll go after all kinds of things, but never go after my personal protection. This is the way Americans look at things. In Canada, it's a completely different story, which to me is mind-boggling. Again, if you think you understand the reasoning behind that, leave a comment in the comment section down below.
In terms of the laws, we have what we have. They're pretty broad. I can't see them changing anytime soon other than weaponizing people, right? So the law as it is now, it does allow you to stand your ground. You don't have to retreat. The law in Canada does not require you to back down or retreat. You can defend yourself. You just have to be reasonable in what you're doing.
But
reasonable. You just said that if people come in with a bunch of teenagers come in and you pull out a golf club, well, that's no longer reasonable. A group of teenagers versus one person with a golf club, come on, your odds are probably not even good even in that circumstance. So I mean, this is really where we're at in Canada.
The hunters can carry bats, they can carry knives. We can't carry even pepper spray. I'm not talking about going around spraying people, liberally. I'm talking about defending oneself. To defend yourself, you can't do that. And the laws seem to be out of step with the current situation that we are now facing in our city. There are a lot of people here in this room, they can take a self-defense course, but they're not going to have the strength to withstand somebody who's really coming out.
So would you agree that the laws are out of step?
I think they're out of step.
So why are we having this conversation? We're talking about these things because you're seeing encampments left untouched. You're seeing crime up on the TTC, people being pushed in front of buses, in front of streetcars, stabbed on streetcars. You've got these protests that are seemingly lawless, where people are shouting death to Jews. No one is doing anything about it. And so people feel, I mean, this is how private militias get started.
Correct.
And so people feel like they have to do something. So, you know, what instruction do the police force operate under?
Things have literally gotten out of control. I completely agree.
Yes, they have gotten completely out of control, and they're at a point where, well, people are starting to take notice. And here's the police chief explaining Trudeau's crime crisis is doing into Ontario's York region.
While York region remains very safe, we are experiencing an increase in crimes involving firearms. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with some of the data so you understand what's taking place within the region and the root cause of gun violence. In 2024, the region has seen a 92% increase in shootings, a total of 46 since January of this year. And we've also seen a 106% increase in carjackings, a total of 64 since January of this year. And equally troubling, since 2019, over a 5-year period, we've seen a 400% increase in carjackings, which are violent and traumatizing for victims and their families. Illegal handguns have become all too easy to access with limited consequences for criminals. And almost all of the guns being used in these crimes are illegal handguns, many of which are being smuggled across the border from the U.S. This surge in gun violence can be attributed to organized crime rings who are obtaining and using illegal handguns to commit a number of offenses. Organized crime is also behind both the nationwide increases in auto thefts that we've all witnessed and the ongoing conflict in the tow truck industry.
So there's no such thing as a non-illegal handgun on the streets of Canada. Even if you are you're grandfathered in because they changed the laws, you can no longer become a legal handgun owner in Canada. You no longer can. But even if you are grandfathered in, you can't just walk down the street with a handgun. So on the streets, there is no such thing as a legal handgun. It is not a thing. But I mean, let's talk to the criminals here, Mr. Criminal out there. Are you worried about perhaps being charged with holding an illegal firearm while you're planning your robbery? I mean, this is absurd to think that the criminals are going to be the ones to abide by these laws. Every time the government comes in and says, we're going to make new laws, stricter laws about firearms, who is that aimed at? It's only aimed at law-abiding citizens. It's not aimed at criminals. Criminals are going to do whatever criminals are going to do to get the crime done. But what we're doing in Canada is we're incentivizing them, we're emboldening them, and we're giving them more reason to commit these crimes. Because, hey, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything about it, because if you try to thwart a criminal or even deter them from coming after you, well, you're now going to be committing a crime. You are now the criminal. That's what is happening in Canada. They're making criminal your ability to defend yourself, or at least to deter criminals from coming after you. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. Leave a comment in the comment section. And of course, let me know what you think. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.